because First Nation, and it's on their land that we live, work each day. You have the agenda. I understand that staff has no additions or deletions, but the council can see it none. The motion, the agenda is presented. All in favor? Opposed? You have the minutes of the March 14th regular council meeting and the March 21st committee of the whole meeting. Yeah, motion to adopt. Second.
I'll second that.
Okay. Is there any errors, submissions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, we have two delegations. First is Vanderhoof Search and Rescue. Come on up.
Thank you.
Welcome.
There's a PowerPoint presentation. Will it be?
Right behind you.
Oh. So how does that work? Do I turn my chair around?
You can turn it to the side there, yeah.
Thank you. Or is it okay if I stand and present?
You can do that as well.
Awesome. Maybe if I, Ethan, is it you running the clicker or?
Yeah.
Whenever you're ready.
Okay.
So, folks, my name is Chris Washimansky. I'm one of the search managers with the Chack Valley Search and Rescue. Been there for as long as Ken Young has been in his 50s. So. So, Chack Valley Search and Rescue has been around for 30 years. We provide the volunteer service here and the RCMP detachment in Fraser Lake, for those who don't know us. And we try to give an annual review. Last year with COVID, things kind of got interrupted. So we wanted to make sure we got you folks caught up for this year. So next slide, please. So last year, we did see an above average number of calls. We're not a super busy group like North Shore Rescue or some of the groups in the Okanagan that are over 100 calls a year. They face much different challenges in terms of trying to deal with volunteer retention and responding effectively for the different types of calls that they get. We did have our 30th anniversary last year. We had a small gathering during the summer when we could outdoors and were able to pull the volunteers together and their partners, spouses, and significant others and acknowledge that, which was fun. And then COVID has been a challenge, no doubt, especially on training and also things like PPE and equipment. As an example, we've been waiting over a year for some of the equipment that we've needed in terms of orders, and it's just a supply chain issue. I'm sure you've probably heard that phrase ad nauseum. But when you've got things like personal protective equipment for searchers or rescuers out in the field not available, or the personal protective equipment, it has been a struggle. Thankfully, the Provincial Association has been able to take that on. And as an example, we actually had a donation of $150,000 in masks over the Christmas break. And that allowed for N95 masks to be available for all of our volunteers. For us to try to source those was a real challenge. And at the time, now they've kind of become much more widespread, but it's kind of in that moment you need it now. You can't say, oh, please hold on to your rescue for 2 weeks. We'll get to you once the supply chain issues have been fixed. So thankfully, we do kind of have that ability to leverage things across the province, but it has been an ongoing struggle for sure. One of the things with our group we always are dealing with is member retention, and it's very much a function of two things. With different job situations in our communities, folks are oftentimes leaving, and so we'll train them up, and then they'll take a job in another community. And this isn't new. I've been on the group for 25 years, and this has always been an ongoing issue. It's just something that we have to be mindful of as an organization. But it means then, in terms of our structure, we're always in a kind of recruiting mode. The training to become a full member is 100 hours of training time. And so it is a significant commitment, both for the incoming volunteer, but also for the organization to find instructors and have that calendar set aside for those times. We're really appreciative of those folks who stick around for 5 years. Lots of groups in the province struggle with, at the 5-year tipping point, their turnover is more than 50%. For us, it varies. Sometimes we'll have a crop that'll stick on, more than 5 years, but oftentimes that 5 years, it's quite a commitment. We ask folks to put in 200 or more hours a year as a standard benchmark, and that number comes from Federally and provincially, we have a SAR tax credit for volunteers, and to achieve that, you need 200 hours. So it's kind of a benchmark to say if you want to get that credit, that's what it is. To be a member, our standards are much lower for attendance, but that we want to have our folks understanding that expectation. And then this year we were able to successfully launch in partnership with the Vanderhoof Community Foundation, our named fund. We were kind of overwhelmed with the success of that. We were trying to raise $4,000 and we raised over $8,000. Our goal long-term is in excess of 50,000. So for those not familiar, you basically get an investment return, and that amount is what you would have, for example, to pay for the hydro or that sort of thing. So one of our sources of funds provincially, the province gives our provincial association close to $6 million, and we get a share of that, which meets much of our costs. But we are trying to diversify where we're getting our sources of funds so that we're not chronically coming to the same sources to pay for hydro, electricity, that kind of stuff. So, and then we have been doing a variety of community service things. It's actually quite a great opportunity for us with the grooming ski trails. It keeps our equipment moving. We are not a busy group in the winter, so that kind of keeps the things moving. It keeps our members current with the equipment and training, and then it helps out the community locally. If we've got to run the snow machine up and down a trail, to drag a groomer behind you and have it a 2-minute drive from the hall is a real convenience in that sense. So it's been a real win on that side. We're also doing some work with the local high school to improve water safety with some of the high school students. And then there was a third one that I forgot to name on there as well, and it escapes me here. But in the past, we've also helped out with the Parade of Lights, and then we've also been working with the community of Fraser Lake for some of their July long weekend events that they've been having too, as we cover that RCP detachment also. So next slide. So there's our call volume. You can see, as I said, it was close to one of our busier years. It's hard to predict what things are going to look like. We anticipate next year will be busier because of two things. Wildfire situation has really, you see the kind of the top gray. Those are our number of tasks we've done evacuations on. So you can see since 2012, there's only been 2 years where we haven't had wildfire evacuation activities. But then the year following, mushroom picking is absolutely through the roof. And historically, we have a number of mushroom pickers that we'll have to go search for or sadly recover. We've tried prevention stuff at the provincial level, and they're just, they're a tough crowd to kind of get into. There's all kinds of reasons behind that, but it's not a simple thing where you can get in front of a crowd like this and say, don't do that and do this, and it's all good. So in that regard, we expect a busy season, which usually starts about May long weekend and goes through to the middle of July. But it is a one-year event because the mushroom buyers only want the mushrooms the first season after fire. The years after, there are mushrooms, but they're not worth the purchases and the prices. For those who aren't aware, last year, when was it? I can't remember when we had the big one out. Was it 2019? I think it was after the Shovel and Island Lake fires. We had a bunch. People were making $1,000 a day cash. So you can understand why there's lots of people out there. And then second of all, you're getting folks from like around the world coming to pick mushrooms with those kind of prices. So kind of expect as a community to see kind of a flood of people May, June, July, and then they kind of disappear. Whether there's any kind of money that actually flows into your community, I know Fraser Lake, they didn't find much of a kind of purchase other than your gas station and, the liquor store and snacks and that sort of thing. So that was us last year. Next slide. And then in terms of the call volume, in British Columbia, there are 78 recognized groups, and they can get called out anywhere. So the standard of training is exactly the same. So you can see we've been kind of across the north quite a bit last year. There were a number of instances, especially with Prince George Search and Rescue, where they had large searches and needed people for multiple days, and so we were able to provide that. And that is a testament to the employers and the businesses in town who give their employees time off, because none of these are really, 7 p.m. till 10 p.m. or Saturday or Sunday. It's more often it's a Tuesday at 9 a.m. or 4 a.m. that we're getting calls saying we need you in Quesnel by 9 a.m. sort of thing. And it is really appreciated when either employers can see that their employees don't lose time or pay, or say, we'll give you the time off, but you'll need to find, it's holiday time or that sort of thing. So So that was, and then you can see the graph there. That's our historical kind of busiest month. So as I mentioned, in the wintertime, we're not a busy group. So having activities to run our snow machines is helpful. But basically from here on in until November, that's going to be our busy time. And we've already had 2 callouts this year, which isn't a surprise. It's kind of 1 a month sort of thing, and usually nothing too serious. Next slide. And then in terms of the tasks, the light green and the light blue, kind of the quarter there, those are tasks that take 1 or more days. And some of those tasks last year were in the 7 to 9 day range. So it's quite a commitment to go out on a search and keep it staffed. Because, for example, we had a search out in Quesnel that went 9 days. We had people there 7 of 9 days. So, for example, John could go for 2 days and Mary could go for 1 of those days. And so it really is the whole group kind of saying, I'm available in these times and pitching in where we can to make those calls happen. But that is, this is a new slide, a new set of data that we started collecting. We don't have the historical data. But I would hazard a guess it's probably a quarter of our tasks are a day or longer, with kind of 5 days being about 15 to 20% of our tasks go kind of 5 days or longer. And that's, for example, the mushroom pickers, the hunters, some of those folks that kind of venture further afield, they can be quite a long task in terms of trying to resolve. Next slide. So here's some of the calls that we had last year. There was a float plane crash in Fraser Lake. Thankfully, the pilot survived. Plane crashes are usually not very forgiving. And was rescued by some local folks living on the lake. We also had a search for the elderly gentleman there. That was a curious one. Limited mobility, probably couldn't even walk to Ken's truck, and then never mind stepping up to get into it. And he disappeared in like the most nasty thick brush I've ever seen, down in a creek. That was like, we were using ropes to try to get down to the creek bed, and he was apparently walking, going fishing, and just vanished completely. His vehicle was left on the side of the road, and never saw him. So that was a real puzzle. And then we thankfully helped out Prince George and Quesnel Search and Rescue with a missing 12-year-old. We ended up actually in that area 4 or 5 times last year in total in the Hickson area. Usually that's not a busy spot, but for whatever reason, it was quite a hot spot last year for the search and rescue community. Next slide. Then we also assisted Quesnel Search and Rescue with a hunter who went missing last June, just prior to the heat dome. Tragically, we never found him, and we had to suspend the search. The last day we were out there was 38 degrees, and that's when the heat dome really took off. We'd been out, was it 5 or 6 days already on that task by that time, and so the likelihood of a successful find was decreasing. But searcher safety was a big concern, and so we had to suspend that search, and no clues were ever found other than his cell phone. We actually searched an area about the size of this room. It took 10 searchers 2 hours to find his cell phone. That's how thick the brush was in an area like that. So. And then last year with the wildfire situation, we were out multiple days helping the regional district and RCMP with evacuation alerts and orders for both the Cutoff Creek and Grizzly Creek fires in our backyard here. Next slide. And then we also assisted PG Sauter last year. They've had some struggles with folks being affected by COVID particularly. And so, again, that mutual aid where we're able to help each other as neighbors. We went a number of times to Prince George to assist. And that one, we had a gentleman who was rescued by Longline, the helicopter. There you can see basically hang somebody at the bottom of the helicopter, 100 or so feet below. They lower him in, you package up the subject, bring him out, and we're able to have a successful rescue on that. And then we wrapped things up last year with a search out in Prince Rupert on Halloween weekend. That had searchers all the way from Quesnel up Stewart, out to Prince George and Mackenzie, and then all the way out to Prince Rupert, searching for 9 days. And tragically, we never found any sign of him. Young man running down the highway, spotted 3 times very, very accurately, and just disappeared off the radar. And we had multiple days searching, really tough conditions and weather, and sadly never found any more track of him. Next slide. So then our current membership, to run a search, we need search managers. Currently, we have 3. We are hoping to have a 4th accepted to a course this year. The search manager certification is quite an undertaking. So it is something that we really appreciate when folks can step up to the plate. We'd like to have as many as possible, because if you don't have a search manager, you can't run a search. But we're in kind of decent shape, at least for that. And then team leaders take folks out in the field, and then the searchers there And then our specialty team with water rescue, we've been very successful in kind of having a new generation of folks coming in with kind of a younger, more enthusiastic, less backaches as they swim through the rapids approach to life. And starting to kind of have that mentorship, because it does take some years to kind of have that experience and background to know, what's safe, what kind of safety considerations when you're going into rapid, that sort of thing. So, and that is us. Last slide. Any questions?
Yes, go ahead.
You talked a little bit about the training and sort of how it's standardized across the province. Is that part of what might lead to more and more? It didn't really show in the chart there. I was kind of surprised. I expected it to be continuing to grow because, you were higher and then you went down and you were
Yeah.
So your capabilities seem to be much higher than they were 10 years ago in terms of much more extensive training. Is that true? Or?
The standard of the 100 hours has been in place for at least 20 years. So in that regard, that hasn't changed. What's interesting is, though, for example, Alberta right now is trying to build a SAR system. They do search and rescue. They do less than a quarter of what we do in BC. But first of all, if you took training in Vanderhoof, it would not be the same training you take in Birds Lake. And that's not the same trainings you take in Quesnel or Prince George. Each community has their own standards, and it's all over the map. And then second of all, they don't have any reimbursements or any funding or anything. And so it's truly, I'd never heard of that. And then nationally, they're trying to create a national standard because, for example, when we had the atmospheric river event down in the lower mainland, there was kind of concerns like, are we going to have capacity in BC to actually respond? Interestingly, on that note, of the 78 teams, only 11 teams were involved. The other ones weren't even asked. So in terms of depth to the bench, like we are well suited, whereas the rest of the country is actually in not a good shape. And so they're trying to create a national standard. BC is here. Everybody else is struggling to kind of get up to here. And then we could export people from BC around Canada as they have something similar to a disaster like that, which I think is a really exciting opportunity for like everyone. But yeah, I don't know if I answered your question or.
Well, I thought a few years ago when you came to us, you talked about as you're starting off more of the water rescue, that was something you were branching into. So am I recalling that correctly, that there's a lot more training going on in that area where we didn't have that before?
Yeah, so the water team was created officially in 2007, and the expectations have increased in the last 5 to 8 years, somewhere in that ballpark for sure. And it is, so in addition to that 100 hours, then it's an extra course of 2 weekends, 3 weekends, depending on if you go into the advanced, and then you have to have a minimum 20 hours a year in the water, which the other SAR training that we do does not count. So it is a significant undertaking to become both a GSAR member and a Swift Water member as well. Yeah. And I guess one final comment, historically, the municipality has been funding us. For those who don't know, we had a massive project renovating a building, building a building, and then paving. And that was much appreciated in terms of the partnership there and the long-term lease we have. As I mentioned, the provincial government does provide some funding. It's a static amount of money. It's not been set to cost of inflation increases or that sort of thing. And so I'm smoothing the ground to say in the future, we're likely be coming to look for some funding, because when the provincial government announced that funding, it was expected that local government, businesses, other agencies would be providing funding, because the province kind of said, we'll fund up to 50% and the other partners need to contribute, as it is kind of a multi-approach to having search and rescue in your community. So.
Good. Any other questions, Chris? I guess just on behalf of council, I want to just ask you to relay back to your group how much we appreciate their volunteering in the community. It's not easy to get people to volunteer and to get people to not only volunteer, but to make a commitment like the people at Search and Rescue do. And I think just you taking on the grooming this past winter shows that, you care about the entire community, not only when you get in trouble, but just the well-being as we go through the winter. So anyways, want to just, please, relay that back to your volunteers, how much we appreciate it. Well, thank you so much, Chris.
Thanks, Jerry.
Okay.
Thanks, folks.
Hi, Kathy Peters, can you hear us?
Can you hear me? Yes, I can hear you.
We can hear you real well.
Okay.
Welcome to council. We appreciate you coming to give us a delegation. So we'll turn the meeting over to you.
Great. Thank you very much, Your Worship. I started the Be Amazing campaign, Be Amazing to Stop Sexual Exploitation. And here's my website. It's beamazingcampaign.org. Human sex trafficking and sexual exploitation for the purpose of prostitution is the fastest growing crime in the world, and it's very much here in BC. So what is human trafficking? It is a recruiting, transporting, transferring, receiving, holding, concealing, harboring, or exercising control over a person for the purpose of exploiting them. The key word is exploitation. Stats. 13 years old is the average age of recruitment, much younger for Indigenous girls. In the Lower Mainland, the target age is now 10, 11, and 12-year-old girls. COVID has made this worse. Traffickers are organized and sophisticated. 54% in the sex trade are Indigenous, 70 to 90% in urban centers. They are severely overrepresented in the sex industry. This is the worst case of systemic racism in the country. 82% involved in prostitution had childhood sexual abuse or incest. 72% live with complex PTSD. 95% in prostitution want to leave. It is not a choice. It is not a job. It is not work. And here's the new stat that I just found. 84% of prostituted persons are pimped out or trafficked. So organized crime and international crime syndicates are involved. Crime follows the money, and the traffickers make hundreds of thousands of dollars per victim per year. So I've been raising awareness about sexual exploitation and child sex trafficking to every city council, MLA, MP, and police agency in BC since the Protection of Communities and Exploited Persons Act, PSEPA, became federal law in 2014. So the police would enforce it, so the public would understand it and be able to report it. So the law has 4 parts. Number 1, it targets the demand by targeting the buyer of sex. The trafficker, facilitator, John, buyer of sex are criminalized. Number 2, it recognizes seller of sex as a victim, usually female, and is immune from prosecution. Number 3, exit strategies are in place to assist the victim out of the sex trade. Number 4, there's a robust prevention education program in place so youth, children, and the vulnerable are not pulled into the sex industry. This law focuses on the source of the harm, the buyers of sex and the profiteers. The clear statement from Parliament was that girls and women in Canada are not for sale, that they are full human beings with dignity and human rights. This law is not enforced in BC or Vancouver. Vancouver and Toronto are global sex tourism hotspots. Canada is a child sex tourism destination. And I got that from this report, the Trafficking in Persons report from the US State Department, and also from this new book called Sex Industry Slavery, Protecting Canada's Youth. This is by Dr. Robert Christmas. He's a Winnipeg police officer that I have presented with. The global sex trade is growing very fast. It is targeting our children because children is where the money is. It's fueled by the internet, where most of the luring is taking place. Contributing factors are globalization, unregulated technology, limited law enforcement, and very little prevention education. Canada has a brand new national human trafficking hotline number, 1-833-900-1010. Provincially, we have OC-TIP, nobody's heard of it, but we do have Victim Link, and it has a helpline. And I'd like to think that Vanderhoof has got these posters, you know, in community centers and your city hall and that kind of thing. And they're really helpful. Pornography is fueling the sex industry and creating the market for commercially paid sex. Men and boys are the buyers of sex and are the key to end exploitation. Boys and men must understand there's a sacred part of the woman they have no right to. And I got that line from Vancouver Police Department. So what can Vanderhoof City Council do? Simple strategy. You want to reduce the demand by education and targeting complicit businesses. You want to diminish the supply by education and public awareness. The businesses most involved, absolutely number one, is unregistered massage and body rub parlors. Not giving licenses to these would cut human trafficking drastically. Nail spas, day spas, modeling agencies, tattoo parlors, escort services, cheap bars and hotels, men's clubs, Airbnb, VRBO, casinos, strip clubs, organized crime clubhouses, bus stops, homeless camps, tent cities, work camps, modeling agencies, pool halls, community centers, malls, and anywhere that youth congregate can be typical covers for sexual exploitation. Crime clubhouses can be removed by land use bylaws. This was done in Manitoba. In Ontario, every motel and hotel guest has to be registered who is physically in the room. The sex industry is targeting our youth, children, and vulnerable in every BC community, and schools are the recruiting grounds for gangs and sex trafficking. A critical deterrent is a school liaison officer program. The officers prevent crime and protect the vulnerable. An anti-police narrative harms our communities. So BC is behind every province in Canada by not enforcing the federal law or providing prevention education. So a really important resource is a Canadian Centre to End Human Trafficking. They have released their first report on trends in human trafficking in Canada. The biggest problem is Canadians don't know it's even a problem and they don't know the indicators. So they offer these free posters, wallet cards. Sorry, here's the poster. You can get these for free. You can put these up anywhere in Vanderhoof in public spaces, and they've got the National Human Trafficking Hotline number right on them. Trafficking and prostitution cannot be delinked. Sex trafficking is for the purpose of prostitution. It's really important to understand that link. Not all prostituted individuals are trafficked, but prostitution could not exist without trafficking. So who's targeted? This is a gendered issue. The sex buyers are male and the victims are typically female. The majority of cases in Canada of trafficked victims are under 25 years of age. Indigenous, new migrants, LGBTQ, disabled, youth at risk, youth in care, any girl under 14, and some boys. How is it done? The traffickers are young. They're typically between 17 and 34 years of age. They meet the demand for commercially paid sex because it's highly lucrative. They make hundreds of thousands of dollars per girl, and crime follows the money. The majority of traffickers are male, but a growing number are female, especially in schools. They are organized and sophisticated and often involved with organized crime. 90% of trafficking is online. Traffickers use social media platforms like Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, Kik, TikTok, video game sites, and chat rooms. Boyfriending and love bombing is the tactic, promising expensive gifts, presents, trips, and anything that parents will not give. These are appealing tactics because young people want to be loved and they want friends. So what's the result or outcome? It's a deadly, brutal industry. Do not be fooled into thinking it is work. Victims end up drug addicted, mentally ill, committing suicide, or are murdered. Very few get out, about 5%. The cost to rehabilitate is $60,000 per year for at least 8 years. The sex industry is not glamorous or empowering for any woman. Think Robert Picton, the pig farmer from Port Coquitlam who dismembered prostituted women, particularly Indigenous women. So how do we stop this? We need the 2 E's. We need enforcement of the law and we need education. To the 3 P's, police, politicians, and the public. What are the signs? The girl becomes secretive. She has an older boyfriend that you may or may not meet. She has new clothes. She's jewelry. Gold chains are popular. A change in dress. Frequent sleepovers at a friend's house. A change in attitude to school, friends, and family. The grades drop. Exhausted. 2 cell phones. Has cuts and bruises. Oh, tattoos are cool. Of crowns, diamonds, or initials. Strangulation marks on the neck. What can you do as citizens? Learn, share, alert. Learn about the issue. Share with your family and friends. Alert politicians and law enforcement. This is an issue. So I have a number of asks. Could I do a deeper dive presentation that includes law enforcement, school officials, health practitioners, business owners, and youth workers? Note, I have made over 200 presentations in BC since last March, triggered by the Kamloops mass grave discovery. Communities are now connecting the dots on the harm caused to Indigenous women and girls in the sex industry. Addressing this issue today will prevent abuse and murder tomorrow. We cannot have another Robert Picton, Highway of Tears, or missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls situation. Number 2, could you write the Premier and Solicitor General, they know me, that this crime is a priority in BC and ask for considerable funding for provincial law enforcement and a provincial awareness campaign. BC needs an interagency human sex trafficking task force similar to what is available for drugs and gangs. They have this in most other provinces. Number 3, would you write the federal justice minister, David Lametti, to uphold that law I talked about? And I just presented on the federal justice committee, and this government is considering listening to the sex industry and repealing that law. If they do, Canada becomes America's brothel. And number 4, would you be willing to write a resolution? Dawson Creek has done that for me. They did it on child sex trafficking for UBCM. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, Councilor Losey.
Hi, Kathy. I'm just wondering, I didn't catch where we could get those posters that you talked about.
It's called the Canadian Center to End Human Trafficking. You just Google them. They've got a great website. You'll get the information there. Just phone them. The fun thing is all city councils now, because I present all over BC, are starting to ask for those posters and postcards, and you can get the small wallet cards as well.
Good, thank you.
Any other questions? I want to thank you. I've got a couple questions. Many of the things that you identified as concerns in communities, we don't have in Vanderhoof, a town of our size. The one thing that you talked about, registered guests in hotels, and I noticed that this week as I checked into a hotel in Victoria, they immediately asked, my wife for her name and had it there on registry. Is that a requirement? Is that a BC law that all guests must be registered?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't know. That's a question we could ask Mike Farnworth. I don't know. I haven't heard that, but I do know they do. They just recently passed that in Ontario. Yeah,
because I often hear that guests need to be registered, but I don't know who enforces that. And to me, if we could know that, we've talked to the police, we've talked to businesses. And so if we could know, is it a provincial law, and B, is it something that who enforces it? Would the police enforce it under the Innkeepers Act? I would think it would be in the Innkeepers Act if it was, but that would interest me. The second thing is that the end of your talk, you gave a series of requests, but I don't see them in your presentation. Can you email them to our office?
Yes, I can definitely do that. Yes.
Any other questions? Yes.
It's not really a question. The mayor mentioned that we don't have a lot of the pieces that you talked about, but definitely we have some. And I know in the education sector here in our community, we've had handfuls each year where we've had to intercept, adult individuals throughout the US connecting with some of our students here in the district. So it's definitely something that's out there that most people in our community don't really understand, despite the level of education that's out there. So we consistently have to do more of what you're doing, and that's getting people's faces about this and saying that this is going on, because the levels to which our students can now connect with people far beyond our own country is unbelievable. There's so many of the games, just simple things like Fortnite, which so many kids are on or were on last year, and now they moved on to other things. They're all connecting to people that can masquerade as someone else. So it's a huge issue, and I think more people need to understand that, because for sure we've had people connect with some of our students. So I'm glad you're bringing this up.
Well, yeah, it's a tough topic, and I appreciate you being someone that is taking this on and championing it and bringing it to our attention. And yeah, please, if you could send that letter to our staff, to me, and the thing is, and we can address it here at council, a number of those topics that you have there.
Great. Thank you very much. And I recognize Ken Young because I met you in person at UBC.
They did. I was going to say, you got me in front of the UBCM there a few years ago.
That's right.
Wow. That's a lot of people you were talking to.
Maybe you did something that you.
What did I do wrong? I didn't have distinctive hair like Kevin or the mayor.
There seems to be, there's a story here, and we'll wait till we're not in a public meeting. No, thank you so much. We really appreciate you coming and presenting this, and Councilor Losey, I appreciate you.
Yeah.
Did you hear this presentation at UBC?
No, I didn't, but I heard about Kathy, and I recognize we're in a small community, but one of the things, I was doing some reading about it, and I got this from the Native Women's Association of Canada Human Trafficking Brief, and it said, use of internet allows recruitment and advertisement of girls or victims remotely and discreetly. So even though we're a small, community, we are on Highway 16, and we are very much internet exposed, right? So
We're vulnerable.
yeah, we are. Yeah.
People don't understand that. So.
Yeah.
I don't mean to alarm you, but I want to be really clear. The traffickers down here are scouring every corner of BC. They're going to all your communities. That's what they're looking for. I present all the time to the Indigenous women and girls, and the traffickers are very, very aggressive going after the Indigenous girls. So it is a big problem in BC, and we are literally decades behind every province in Canada. We're 30 years behind Ontario. We're 20 years behind Alberta. So the buyers know that, and they're pouring into BC. So no community is immune. Again, it's done online.
Thank you.
Do you do May presentations to regional districts, rural regional districts?
Absolutely. I probably have presented to about 12 regional districts. I've got a couple coming up. I've got Strathcona coming up and Calfett coming up, but I've done a lot of them in BC, yes.
Yeah, I'm the chair of the regional district of Bully and Chaco, and I think just some of the comments that you and some of the councillors have made, you are concerned because we are right on the highway, and the thing is, vulnerable people, it's kind of like the worst storm, and like as you and some of the people here mentioned, is communication. I know recently I met somebody from Manitoba who I have not the same faith base, not the same ethnic group, nothing. And their grandkids knew a kid who ended up being my grandchild. And I don't know how they met on social media, but they did, and the thing is, it just seems too weird, the connections that are made out there.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Good. Thanks very much.
Thanks. council reports. Councillor Siemens.
Just two things to report. I haven't been around much lately because of the way schedules worked out, but March 2nd, I attended the tourism committee meeting with Councillor Young. And then March 7th, we had our budget meeting. And then I thank Councillor Laze. On March 10th, we had our first attraction retention committee meeting, but I had a family thing that I had to, last minute I had to attend. So thank Councillor Laze for chairing my absence. So, but that's all I have.
Councillor Young.
Actually, I don't think I've had any meetings since our last regular. So I haven't forgotten them.
Okay, March 15th, library board meeting. And just a little bit with what they've been up to, their community adult learning program is continuing to flourish. They hosted a cross-country ski evening. A lot of the folks that are going to this literacy opportunity that's offered through the library are immigrants or new Canadians. And so they hosted a cross-country ski evening and 22 people showed up. So I think that was kind of neat, a way to get them into the community, right? It was something new for them. They've also got a Riverside book program that's continuing to grow. And that was it for the library that I wanted to mention. March 16th, we had a housing committee. We looked at a map of properties that are within the municipality that would be suitable for development, and we discussed any restrictions with those properties, infrastructure, what would be suitable for development on those properties. And so we looked at that map. A few properties were identified, and you know, we'll talk about those a little further, particularly with a request for proposal. They like the idea of the municipality identifying properties and then saying, okay, this is what would be, we need denser housing, we need apartment buildings, so looking for requests for proposals. And we also talked about some community engagement and reviewed a list of questions we would like to have answered by, you know, with that community engagement. So we're looking at possibly doing something in May or June, and we have a fellow from BC Healthy Communities who's willing to help facilitate that. So we talked a little bit about that. And then on March 18th, I attended the Nechako Valley Collaborative Community Table. And I think Councillor Young was part of that. It was a continued discussion on men's health issues. So we did have an action item, and prior to our next meeting, they've asked us to compile a list of resources that are available in the community around men's health. And the purpose of that is to identify gaps in the resources and raise awareness of what is available for men's health. So we're looking at, so all kinds of aspects for men's health. And we talked about different categories of men's health, mental health, just all different kinds.
So when you said they asked us to comply.
Well, just members of
Members of
the
the
committee, yeah,
Okay,
sorry,
good.
yeah.
Good.
There's a good cross-pollination. I think I brought it up a couple of meetings ago between attraction, retention, and this group, and they're trying to focus on certain areas and to see what council is doing in others. So we're not replicating pieces. Yeah, they're very focused. So I think in the next little while it will be fruitful in terms of some action coming out of that.
Excellent. Councillor Moutre, and if you could speak to your environment committee meetings.
Sure. Okay. So I took part in part of the Chamber of Commerce AGM on the 16th. The Chaco watershed, the Chaco freshet update was on the 23rd. Again, it's still looking like a really average year, which should be good flows in the Chaco, but nothing super high. On the 24th was the weekly National Indigenous Day planning meeting. So I had a couple of clarifications I brought back to Gerald, and we'll be going forward with that, but everything looks really good right now. And then this morning, I was in Smithers and I had a quick meeting, half hour with Ben Weinstein, talking about the purple air monitor locations and how we get that system set up. He's offered to come to Vanderhoof for a day when they get installed and aid with some thoughts about where on the locations they should be placed. And then going back to the action item asked for in the meeting minutes was that DOD prioritizes having the province doing something to deal with single-use pallets. In our meetings with MOE at UBCM and encourage the regional district to do the same. I believe that's not in the action item, but I think that would be good to push that up. I think everybody's seen the amount of waste of fiber that there is in single-use pallets at the transfer station. And when we're screaming for fiber everywhere, this is just a silly use of our fiber. So we would like to have council move forward with that.
Is it best to can we do these recommendations or should we wait till after council reports and then do the recommendations? What would you rather?
Mr. Mayor, you can do them now if you like.
No.
And
Okay.
in that portion, we'll just say it was dealt with under council report.
So do you want to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Seconder? Yeah, it's crazy. I can tell you, when I started in the grocery business 50 years ago, I tell you, they numbered off every pallet that came through the door and they were back on the truck. And it just absolutely blows me away when I go to get my pellets now. And I say, where do you want me to dump off the pellets when I'm done? And they go, like, I'll do whatever you want, you know, and then they're just trying to get rid of them. And these are really good pellets that I have. I got half a dozen. They're just excellent quality. Now, in that motion, will you write a letter to the RD? You know, because it is something that we should deal with right for us. Okay. So that'll be in that motion as well. That's it. Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay. Councilor Murphy.
Nothing new to report, the meeting since our last meeting, but as you see on the agenda, the rewrite committee did meet and we had some action items that were brought forward. So quite a list of items we're looking for L&M for some plans for us to move forward on a design for Highway 16 with the all included in the work plan. It's fairly healthy, like I said, last week the meeting was quite robust and a lot of discussion. It's a fairly healthy list of stuff to do, so. Anybody have any comments or questions or on that? We did see a lot of stuff needed to work on.
So really the purpose of this is to just create a wish list of all the areas and then just so where people understand what it costs and then where we can go from there.
And then we can hopefully throw down into bite-sized chunks as we move forward.
Right.
And just the examples.
I know that was the issue in the past is the magnitude of it. Right? So
It's,
No, these are all connected to each other, eh?
yeah, they are. Yeah. We started out with one end and worked. It's quite a.
It is a big list, yeah.
And I don't even know if this might be way ahead of what you guys are, this might be the foundation, this is probably foundational, and I'm not sure if this is even a relevant question, but what about, like trees and shrub, like, would that be part of the plan as well?
Good question. It could be as we go, but that take.
Yeah, but
There's not a lot of room
to put any.
Yeah,
kind of-
there's probably a few that we could do it.
Yeah, because I would think that if you know, beautification as well.
Yeah. But I think the committee anyway wants to prioritize safety first.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. But yeah,
Beautification is important, but
yeah, I get it. Yeah.
until you can remove some of the obstacles there.
yeah, there's no room for anything else. Yeah.
Eventually, maybe.
Maybe eventually. Yeah, no, that's good. Thanks.
So do you want to make this
I'd
motion?
like to also move forward with this project.
I'll second that.
I have one question that's unrelated to this, and I've had a couple people come and ask me. On the corner of Highway 16 and Burrard, there's a great big four-sided fence post that says not fence posts, but,
Yeah.
you know,
Sign.
We put those in.
who's we?
DOB, that was Hillary's project.
I never,
There's a few of them.
I think they came after, did they not? Because I've had some comments, people say, well, I saw that poster, when that happened, and they,
so where else would they be?
Good question.
Trying to remember, there's.
I've
There's
only,
supposed to be more, but I'm
Down the road down here.
yes,
Mayor, Mayor to the council, there's one on the corner of Burrard and 16, one at Riverside Park. I believe that's it, that I'm aware of. That was done when we did the wayfinding signage throughout the community.
I didn't remember those. I remembered this, the big signage, but when people told me, I said, oh, I don't know what you're talking about, so I drove down.
Been there like a year. Morning years.
Have you seen it? No, take a drive. Yeah. Well, it's intriguing because you do that corner all the time. And
blends in a little much for a sign in my.
yeah, I think,
You're focusing on the road, that's a good thing.
the intersection.
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay. I met with the NDI CEO, just kind of talked about where NDI is, what their involvement, as you can imagine, with the stock market and what's happened. It hasn't affected the trust at this point, but certainly, this isn't the year that we've seen in the past where we were getting 14 or 18% returns on our investments. So that's been tough. But about on the 15th as well, met with youth sports, just on volunteerism. We talked a little bit about that. What we can do to communicate that through the community. Was involved with the CGL update. Certainly those aren't the issue for us at this point. CGL is out of the area. COVID isn't the prime concern that it was 2 years ago, and it's going that way. Went to the Chamber of Commerce AGM. Certainly, I think a concern there is that they don't have a president, and I think it's hard if you don't have a person in that leadership role, and hopefully they can find somebody to do that. 17th did the regional district committee meeting. On the 18th, the Pathways Agreement, that $200 million agreement in which there's about 70 million for business in the area here. Had an update on that, trying to understand how we can be involved. When it was first announced 3 years ago, we were told that we would be very involved in it, and that hasn't happened. So, that's just a concern. Met with Chief Mueller and Councillor Young on a number of different topics that we kind of covered quickly, and that was a really good meeting. March 19th in the evening, did a welcome for the U15 provincial hockey. March 21st, I chaired the NDI PG RAC meeting for NDI. And then left on the 22nd for Victoria and was involved in CAO regional district meetings. And they were good. It's interesting always just to see things that are coming up on the horizon in other regional districts and what they are seeing as real challenges. Housing certainly is a big issue everywhere. And in some of the areas, they're doing their own development, just because it's so difficult to get things going. On the evening of the 23rd and the day of the 24th, I'm a trustee on the Municipal Finance Authority, and so I was in Victoria for that, and again was very interesting. Some good information. I encourage our CAO, and I don't know how, but those kind of means, the slide presentation I did send it to you, didn't I, Cheryl? Slide presentations, yeah. They had good quality in it. today, myself and Gerald met with Northern Health just on recruitment, trying to decide what we can do to get that information out. What are those things that we need, you know, and certainly care workers, you know, probably in the manner, and I would think after what we've gone through with COVID, are going to be really huge. So yeah, that's there. Just want to remind everybody, April 1st, Parkview grand opening. It's, you know, it's huge, you know, for our community. It will be a huge addition. I believe it's 9 o'clock. That's seems to be where everybody's talking about it. I know, I think I told you, somebody they're bringing a delegation from Kitimat because they've been trying to accomplish this for quite some time. And so we'll be there. Any questions, comments? Yes.
I just had a question about the carry. Do you know if they're offering another, like when you met with Northern Health, were they a carry program at CNC? I know that they ran one, but do you know if they're
and that's my question, and that's going to be something that this group, I don't think it, you know, that I think it needs to be someone with more focus on it than not what I can give to it. You know, they mentioned to us that there was a program going on in stores. Doesn't make me feel,
no?
You know,
Okay.
and the thing is so, you know, I'm going to talk to Gerald, work on this, try to find somebody that would take that, because it needs to be something that works here in this community and works for this community. Some of the people that would take that carry course would like to take it, but they cannot quit their job.
No.
It has to be things that work around the schedule, and there's no reason why it can't take.
Yeah.
And so CNC has to work.
So the CAO, I'm just wondering, after you have these conversations, if we can get from Northern Health at some point, sort of an itemized understanding of what areas they're looking at beyond just this one specific job, because we know there's shortages. We know there's other training that could possibly happen, but we don't know what specifically for. And that would really help us if we're going to CNC or trying to find more opportunities for training. So I think right now we're just kind of operating in the dark. We hear one thing, and in the past we've been really trying to help with the, you know, with nurses and doctors and physios, but we don't know. There's a breadth of occupations in our region, like in Fraser Lake, Vanderhoof, St. James, etc. So if there was something where we could get that type of training in a new CNC, that would be amazing. So not that we're trying to do their job, but I think we all need to work together in that and understand how we can get local people involved. So
we asked him to produce a list to us, and he said he would get back to us with that, you know, almost right away, didn't he?
Yeah, what Northern Health is planning with these tables is that once a month, there's going to be a list of the recruitments that they're actively searching for or have completed. And over the long term, that'll give us an idea of where we're facing some critical skills or shortages, and allow us to identify if there is a regional shortage, say in radiologists or lab techs, a regional training opportunity specific to those fields.
and just the whole breadth of it too, right? Because, you know, oftentimes when we're looking at local involvement or students coming through high schools, et cetera, they don't even understand the opportunities that are within the healthcare beyond the traditional ones that they hear about. So there's so much more than what's often being shared. So I think it's a good eye opener for a lot of people.
I think especially in the area of lab techs, I've had a number of calls from mayors in smaller communities up and down the line. And if you don't have a lab tech, you're in trouble. You know, if you go into the hospital, you're sick, you see a doctor in emergency, and if there's no lab tech, you know, like they can't do any analysis, you know, any blood work, anything of that. You're in an ambulance going to the neighboring community. And so the thing is I really realized here in the last little while when this whole thing with the lab techs has come to the forefront, because I think Burns Lake said they were up without one. St. James may have one. You're in trouble, if you don't, and you rely on your neighboring communities for everything. Good. Any questions from the public on anything on the agenda? And there was nothing came in by mail or anything. 7.1, by grad request.
Second. He does it passive.
Not this.
Backwards. It's been the grad ceremony in the past. So this is the parent group that's applying for this, not the school. So that's the difference, right? So just because of, it's in here, but if up until just recently, we weren't even sure what kind of grad we were going to be able to offer. And so we're hoping to have it within the school, which would take away the regular opportunity for dry grad. And so instead of having everybody do all the work at the arena for grad, there'd be less work to host this for the single night. So they're hoping to.
Heidi, can I ask you a question? With this, is this request possible staff-wise?
We can do it.
Any questions, any comments from yourself?
Not at this time, though.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, incoming correspondence. See, response there. Any comments? Okay. Our strategic objectives.
Through the mayor and council, these are the 22 strategic objectives that have been finalized and are being released publicly at this meeting. So these will form part of the municipal objectives for the 2022 annual report that's published next year.
This here will tomorrow then be on our website if somebody
Correct.
wants to know.
This is the change that we discussed last meeting.
I believe so.
Yeah, I think so.
Hey, we don't need a motion for this, do we?
No, this is being presented for information only.
Any questions at all? Movies in the park.
Through the mayor and council, there's a recommendation before you with a report attached. If there are any questions, our director of community services is here to answer those questions.
Is there a way we could start a bit earlier than that? We've done it in the past. And I know the first one sometimes was a little tough. We were able to do it. So, because the other piece is as we get later in the summer, it also gets quite cool. So we're kind of balancing two things. And so I think traditionally we did, not traditionally, but often we're able to do 4.
That's what I.
And now we're down to 2. And they're starting right at the end of summer. I was really hoping we'd be able to do some of the weeks before that, but.
Through mayor to council. So the problem is our equipment, right? So I'm looking into updating our equipment, and once we get the equipment updated next year, we'll be able to have those throughout the summer. We'll try to split them up so that we're all through the summer. Not right now, if you want to be able to watch the movie, you have to start in August, and that's why I made them so late. And we can add more. I was just starting with 2 this year, just looking at budget wise, because I have quite a bit on the go. So, yeah, that's why I started with 2, but I can definitely look into having more. If you guys really want to have 4.
Are we still, sorry,
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, are we still looking at using the whole, of the trailer, the the stage to do this, or we're gonna look at something different?
Well, I would like to look at something different.
Because that's where the
Yeah,
cost comes in,
yeah,
right?
that's
So
what
if we could have a screen that's not utilizing the stage and make it simplify it, right? We don't need to have, that's what we had, and so we used it. But I just think people were already starting to enjoy those evenings, and we would, sometimes we had 100 people or more in the park. I think up to the peak, we had 150 people at least. But if we can add another date or two in August, I think that would be good. I think you're right, July right now really pushes the limit on the lens or the lumens quality on that projector, but it was pretty good for, August.
It's,
July can't.
Yeah.
do it very well. It's a little late.
we can add 2 more. And,
With the trust we have, we shouldn't need to use the stage. We should be able to set the screen up on
that's
the
what I
truss.
thought too.
Yeah.
So we have that
Yeah.
purchase.
And then it's just easy cleanup, right? I can have summer students do it and not have public works that costs us a fortune, right?
That's what I was saying,
Yeah.
we don't, as long as we have a sound, it doesn't have to be Dolby quality, it just does.
No, and that's what I was looking into, is finding a screen for just this year, and
Okay.
then moving forward to next year, hopefully have it at least once a month. Give us something to look forward to monthly. And we do have heaters too. We
Oh,
have 4 heaters, so.
yeah, I remember that, we tried it once.
So my question is there any way that we could do one more Friday in August and one more Friday in September? Like we're doing it on the long weekend, which won't be a great thing, but if we could do it that first Friday after the kids go back to school, I just think, I just sense that when I saw the activity down at the ice rink with the provincials, people are just so starving for some activity. And if there was a way that we could go that Friday the 19th of August and then September the 9th. Yeah.
Another possibility is we could have movies in the park at the arena, because then we can turn the lights off, right? That's another.
Yeah, I think,
It's just, I think everybody's enjoying being outside.
That's right.
so.
and we didn't want to replicate a theater
Yeah,
experience because then we're really hitting our business. And if we kept to the oldies and did it outside, it was something different, right?
So Council Mutra, okay, go ahead, Joe.
So through the mayor to council, so our director does have the ability, provided that she has a budget remaining, to add nights with feedback from the public on when those would be appropriate. So my suggestion would be, if council is really just looking at receiving the report for information, receive the report and then see how things play out. And if Heidi has budgetary room,